welcome to the Earth Keepers podcast. This podcast is for people who seek new and better ways to love and care for the earth. It's a podcast for anyone who is deeply concerned about the harm being done to the environment on a local and global level. It's a podcast that builds community and connection between people of like heart and mind, people who believe that earth care should be integrated into every aspect of life, and for many in the Earth Keepers community, that includes our spiritual lives. As you may know, in Season 3 of the podcast, we're dedicating a good number of our episodes to the exploration of environmental justice themes. In this episode, we'll be talking with Ray Williams, director of Black Farmers Collective, and Yeawa Asabi, a volunteer at Yes Farm, an urban community project that the collective has established in the heart of Seattle. Yeawa has also been a student in the graduate program where I've served as professor. As is the case with so many of my students, I've learned new things from Yeawa, such as the restorative power of farming to heal the social wounds of her generation.
There's so much trauma in today's world, and for me, bringing my sibling out here and allowing them to work into the farm and the land and seeing how that has just affected them and has affected their life. And for myself, I consider myself a youth and how it's impacted me, just continuing to bring youth in and for Black folks really shifting that narrative of what farming is, right? And that our folks have been doing this. We weren't just slaves, right? We were greatness. And so we can definitely channel that and bring ourselves back to that greatness when it comes to farming.
Welcome, friends, to the Earth Keepers podcast. Well, welcome to the podcast. Ray, I wonder if you could tell us just a bit about how you are connected to Black Farmers Collective.
Thank you, Forrest. So Black Farmers Collective came out of a lot of my community work in community gardens. And so I'm co-founder and I'm the managing director of the Black Farmers Collective.
And Yeawa, welcome to you as well. Can you talk about your connection to Black Farmers Collective, or more importantly, your connection to Yes Farms?
Thank you, Forrest. My connection to Yes Farm is I was Googling it, just trying to get out in the world during COVID and trying to connect with land, just something that I did as a child. And being connected with Yes Farm, I've been working on my thesis there that has a lot to do with Black liberation, Black wellness, and redefining what that means, or co-creating a definition for that for the Black community through a horticultural, spiritual, and ancestral lens.
Fill us in a bit about what Black Farmers Collective is about, and maybe even some of the story about how and why the organization got started.
It got started in response to this opportunity for some farm space in the center of the city, which became Yes Farm. Some community folks were together talking about opportunities to expand urban farming in the city. We decided to answer the RFP for Yes Farm, started building a case why we should be the organization that got the space, and we were successful. The Seattle Housing Authority had an idea of turning the freeway right-of-way near Yesser Terrace Housing Project into an urban farm, and we agreed that was a project that we would be able to take on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, how about Yes Farm in particular, since that's where your experience is centered? Tell us about what Yes Farm is really about. What are some of the core values and practices that you've experienced there?
As far as my experience, Yes Farm has definitely been a space where Black folks can come together and exist outside of capitalism and just have a space where Black folks can learn different techniques. I think for myself, it definitely has been a doorway of opportunity. Overall, just has led me to the job that I'm working with now. It's led me to learn more about myself and my own internal work and how that expands outwardly. And the folks that I've met there, allowing myself to be my full self, if that makes sense, amongst other folks.
Why do they call it Yes Farm? I'm curious.
It was a name that sort of came up as a working name early by one of our early founders. It is in Yesser Terrace, so it sort of echoes that. My philosophy about dealing with community work is often that idea about yes and we couldn't make a yes and farm, so we just called it Yes Farm.
Now, Black Farmers Collective is also a curious name because I'm guessing that probably a lot of the people who come to Yes Farm, for example, wouldn't call themselves farmers, right? So where is that coming from, that Black Farmers Collective moniker?
That was a name that we came up with from the organization that was the start of this, really to get the bid. it is in some ways not totally correct. It's becoming a collective of Black farmers. But when it started, it was a name that was maybe aspirational, that we're trying to start something here, an urban farm in the city, a gift to the city of Seattle in many ways, improving the space there, and then having the farm be a space where folks could learn about farming and we could build community there, can be welcome to be there actually themselves in that space, however they wanted to show up. And it's developed into the start of our farm incubation program. There, folks gain experience there. They realize they like it. They start to look for other experiences. And then we as a collective are constantly looking for experiences for them as well. We were able to actually, through this experience, lease 4 acres of land from King County. They own it in farm preservation work. So we're expanding a peri-urban farm outside the city of Seattle. And this is really going to greatly improve our production capacity so we can serve more folks.
Yeawa, tell me about your experience as a farmer, quote unquote. I think that you actually came into agriculture and plant care through your experience at Yes Farm. Is that right? I mean, would you call yourself a farmer in any way at this point?
Yes, I would consider myself a farmer. I think the manager at Yes Farm, Hannah, as we were going through and as they were teaching me, they just kept reminding me, like, I'm learning as I go. I'm learning as I go. Like, there is no right way of doing this. And it's just a learning experience. So definitely, I would consider myself a farmer now. And like Ray was saying, it definitely has opened up opportunities and avenues for me to further expand that, rather it's working with hydroponics, rather it's learning how to do mulch, rather it's learning how to care for animals. There's so many different facets in that. So I think being at Yes Farm, it definitely destigmatizes what it means to be a farmer, or like that pressure, I guess, overall.
Yeah, so farmer almost becomes a badge of honor.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, let me ask you, Ray, when you look back on your life, how would you describe the evolution of your connection to earth care in particular? And maybe how has that connection changed over time?
Growing up as a mixed race kid in Seattle, my family did a lot of car camping back in the day. Seattle was a much smaller city. And so that was a way to get out into the woods, became really connected to nature, both the forest and the water in the area. I studied biology in college, bounced around a bit, but then became a science teacher. So I'm really connected and started to understand the connection between the natural world and humans. One of my last teaching positions got me to teach some nutrition classes, and that really connected me with health, the value of the food we eat and our environment on our health, whether it's the stress that we're getting at work, stress relief of doing a little gardening. I think parallel to that, always had a little bit of a farm going, a little garden in our house. Grew up, we had some friends who had a farm, and we used to spend some time out there. I got an idea growing up about what subsistence farming was, and I liked it. And so here at the end, when I'm looking for a way to serve my community, developing the small farms and then developing a larger farm. And I think we've gone as a Black Farmers Collective from just trying to grow some food for the community to trying to create a space where community can thrive in many other ways. And now we're starting to look at how can we affect the local food system? How can we bring some equity to that, better food into the system, looking at folks that have to travel too far to get food? How do we work on distribution? How do we increase the opportunities for folks to do some value added for economic development in the food system? And again, the experience that we all have grown through this has put us in positions that maybe we can influence some of the decisions that are being made. And I think we're at a good time. Unfortunately, the pandemic has really been horrible on lots of folks, but it was a wake-up call, and a wake-up call in terms of the fragility of the food system. And it gave us an opportunity to serve early by starting to give away the food that maybe we had planned to sell. But now we're in a position to be able to help young folks. I mean, what better gift can a guy get than to see young folks that get experience to this farm and want to move up through that? So for me, it's been very rewarding on a number of levels.
You know, it's been interesting. A number of guests have said something along the lines of what you're saying, that the pandemic, as awful as it's been, has yielded new opportunities and brought new things to light, made things possible that maybe weren't considered possible before. So I appreciate that perspective. Yeawa, let me ask you, I know that Yes Farm has really forged a connection between you and the land. But when you look back at your formative influences, do you have a story like Ray's, or do you really look back and think that there was an emerging commitment to the land and to creation care that has just found fulfillment now in your work?
Growing up, my mother had a garden, and that was the place where I saw her to be most calm, most centered in so many ways. And just seeing that and growing up with that, I was like, okay, how do I get back to that now that I'm going through life, experiencing my own and navigating my own mental health, navigating the world around me and adulting? I would definitely say Yes Farm has been a huge part of that. And being in high school, I was interested in food justice, but it wasn't quite what I wanted to do. So being able to come out to Seattle and going to school and then coming to Yes Farm and then being exposed to just all these different ways of farming, being exposed to all these different folks that have been doing this for so long, that have been leading the way as far as like agriculture, as far as farming, and knowing that Black folks were doing it, I was like, wow, this is incredible. So definitely Yes Farm was that push, that leverage for me, that core alignment that I was like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. And then meeting the folks that I was meeting at the farm, this is definitely where I'm supposed to be. And then that just continues to shape my worldview, continues to shape my day-to-day life, it continues to shape my friendships, relationships. And it's really been expansive. And I'm really grateful just for the space and the opportunity to continue to learn.
So you and I have a relationship outside of the podcast through academia. Mm-hmm. And I have to say that I always looked forward to the small updates I got when you would talk about your work at Yes Farm, just because you were learning so much that went beyond just caring for animals, caring for plants and the earth. Yeah. That there was really some fundamental changes that were happening in you and even in your identity, I would say. Is that actually a correct read? And maybe you could tell me more about what actually did happen at Yes Farm in terms of your internal work.
I would definitely say for myself, learning that change really comes from within, and then it's a ripple effect. So it starts within your own internal work, and then it ripples to maybe the people you live with or your family, and then it turns into the community, right? So I would definitely say for myself, just recognizing that no one's going to do the work but me, and being intentional with the ground and being intentional with what I'm doing. It taught me a lesson about life that, yes, we can also go with the flow, just like the plants do, and they grow, they die, there's trial and there's error, right? But at the same time, there's this bigger picture and there's this bigger hope, and knowing that eventually the crops will grow, even through trial and error, that the crops will grow. And that's how I feel about myself. It's like the trials and tribulations that I experience in life, and just having a very unique upbringing with a mentally ill parent, understanding that and just knowing that at the end of the day, like, I will be taken care of because the earth will consistently take care of itself. There are people around to take care of the earth that are going to continue to do this work. And that was just so heavily reflected as I continue to experience Yes Farm, just understanding that my internal work, it'll continue to grow and it'll continue to affect the people around me and my community in just beautiful ways.
Right. In the podcast this year, season 3, we're paying particular attention to issues of environmental justice and their relationship to social justice issues. So I'm wondering how you would describe the mission of Black Farmers Collective in terms of environmental justice or social justice, or maybe is it both?
I think our mission is both. We started out just wanting to improve the health of the community by growing a little bit of your own food, eating better, getting some exercise, getting outside, being part of a community. All these things have been really shown to improve life and life expectancy. So I think that was really the original vision of Black Farmers Collective, to get more folks on the land in any ways that they can. I've come to think of environmental justice and social justice really being quite related. Environmental justice, I think, to me, is having equal access, equitable access to clean food, clean water, a good place to live, housing, employment, where you live in the city. I think those are social justice issues and environmental justice issues. We've chosen to focus on the food aspect, but food, it really connects us all through culture and through the economy. Our mission is evolving. Our definition of our mission is evolving. I mean, I think it's now come to include creating spaces where community can be built, where people can feel welcome, can become their whole selves. And I think the connection with the land and that natural world, a cycle, and being connected to nature, even though it's in the middle of the city, is an important part of continuing to understand what it is to be human and what it is to be part of the world and part of a community. An evolving mission, but around that key part of our idea that connection to the land and growing some of your own food and understanding where your food comes from and its effect on you are important pieces. So I think environmental justice is social justice. Social justice is environmental justice. And I think the more that folks broaden their definition of what this justice is, they can make more connections between having fair housing, being able to walk down the street and not thinking that the police are going to be really attacking you, not having to go too far to get fresh food, having the opportunities for employment and then also advancement entrepreneurially to join the economy that we have here. So I think those are all social and environmental justice issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, how about you? Where do you locate the work of Yes Farm on that spectrum of environmental justice and social justice?
Yeah, I would definitely say, just reiterating what Ray said, it's just a huge intersection and it continues to intersect. And I would say it would fall, I guess, in the middle, quote unquote, of that spectrum. But similar to what Ray is saying, it's becoming like a spectrum of its own. It's not just 0 to 1, it's everything after 1 and everything before 0, if that makes sense. I think Ray said it perfectly when he's talking about those intersections and how you can't really separate the two because they're so heavily connected, especially in America and especially when we're talking about in Seattle.
Well, tell me if you could perhaps share a story about the work of Yes Farm that illustrates that dynamic of social justice and environmental justice happening at the same time.
The space that Yes Farm is, I think it's so inclusive. I think it's continuously always trying to be inclusive. I know at Small Axe, they're working on building an ADA ramp. They're working on different ways of making sure that all folks are being heard, incorporated, and seen and valued. I think something that's really cool there is folks are constantly asking pronouns. Folks are constantly asking, how do you want to be referred to? So just those things that allow people to really feel seen and heard and valued within a space. And it's becoming more popular in the outside world, outside of this context. But that's where I initially felt that belonging and that true sense of value, like, oh, someone really wants to get to know me and I feel safe enough to share because they're taking the time to try to understand or accept who I am as an individual and how I choose to show up in this space. Rather I'm having a rough day, rather I'm happy-go-lucky, talking to everybody and not doing any work. However it pans out, it's like it's still valuable and it's still great work, no matter however long or short you're there. It's unconditional. That's really what it is for me.
Ray, how about you? Is there a story that you can tell that exemplifies the justice work of Black Farmers Collective or Yes Farm?
I think I'd first like to comment about what Yeawa said about Yes Farm, and I think we have to honor the work of Hannah Wilson, our farm manager down there, to continue to create that a welcoming space that I was hoping for. I think the story of how folks from different spaces can come to the farm and be asked to do some work on the farm in parallel, not too close because of COVID, but still working on the same row or doing the same thing, and can be working in parallel and to be free or not to be able to start having a conversation and creating a relationship between each other that really is focused on what you're doing on the ground, right? So it's an opportunity to meet folks that are often quite different from you, to work together on a project that you both feel is important, that we feel is very important, to be able to help these plants grow so we can feed our community. I think that's why Yes Farm really has resonated with folks. I mean, we really have a lot of folks that, whether they can come out once a week or whether they're just there occasionally, feel like this is a space that they could call their own, right? Not in an individual ownership space, but when you go there, you can feel like you're part of something. So I think that's something that we had thought about building when we started. I think I started this as an opportunity for economic development, a cooperative farm, right? And it's just turned into so much more in terms of a space where community can come and build relationships. That's a story, I think, that we've just been lucky through the evolution, through being open, through not thinking about this space as our own space and how do we get this and hold it in and keep it and develop it for our own, but to reach out with open hands to folks that want to engage in there. And we've had some positive and negative engagement with folks there. For me, it was very important, especially seeing a lot of organizations being co-opted by larger organizations to say, yes, we'll partner. We want to be able to have sovereignty over our land, sovereignty over our ideas about how to do this. I think that's led us to be, in some ways, a little bit of leader of the urban food system, food sovereignty movement in Seattle here. Though there are lots of other things going on, lots of other communities are doing community gardening, and lots of communities want to do this. We're hoping we could be a little bit of a model for how to do things, not a cookbook for what you should do, but what are the ways that you approach communities to try to support them in doing this work. And one of those is, of course, listening and honoring the needs and the skills that are in the various communities.
Hey friends, can you believe that this is the 50th episode of the Earth Keepers podcast? On this special occasion, I just want to say thank you to guests like Ray and Yeawa, guests who always give me gifts of new perspective and deeper understanding. And I'm especially grateful for all of you who have sent words of encouragement to keep us going. Listeners like Jane Campion, who had this to say.
And my experience of the podcast is that it seems simultaneously to reach backwards for ancient wisdom and to speak forwards to a world that is looking for answers. It seems prophetic in many ways, certainly wise, drawing both on lessons of history and looking to the lessons of the future that need yet to be spoken.
So, from all of us on the podcast production team, we send thanks to all of you, listeners from all over the world, to remind us that in the pursuit of earthkeeping, we're never alone. I hear, as you're both speaking, real powerful themes of welcome, of diversity, but also community along with diversity. I have to ask that there must be significance to the fact that it's named Black Farmers Collective, because I think in there somewhere are perhaps issues of racial justice, or at least racial identity. Perhaps both of you could comment on that and help me to understand, how does that factor of race and culture and identity factor into the work of Yes Farm and the collective in general?
I think for myself, how I've seen it, it's not necessarily trying to be exclusionary, but understanding that the way the food system works now isn't going to last and it's not sustainable. And how do we go back to our roots, I feel, as people, as just food is just food, right? And I think creating like a quote unquote like Black food system, right, is going back to those principles of, yes, we still need to be able to make our money and still be able to provide funding in certain areas, but at the end of the day, understanding that food is food and it should be accessible to everyone, and everyone should have the opportunity to learn how to grow their own food and to take what they need, right, and to give what they can. But yeah, I would definitely say it's an overall ideology of how we can shift the food system, not necessarily to exclude or not make anyone feel welcome that they can't be within this ideology of a sliding scale, or like just giving away food, or cooking for one another and having those community events where folks can give money if they feel like it or if they have the means to. But that's how I've come to understand that whole progression and where we're moving as a community, as a people, as a nation even. That's my hopes, that we understand that food is something that is a necessity to life. Water is life, food is life. So how do we create that, and how do we allow that to be accessible for all folk?
Mm-hmm. Ray, how about you? What would you say about any dynamics of racial justice or even ethnic identity that are wrapped into the mission of Black Farmers Collective?
I think those are very important points. I think I'll start with a comment Yeawa mentioned earlier about this idea that there's been a lot of negative connotations with farming. In the Black community, the Great Migration was to move away from farming. A lot of the urban farming models, and if you think of urban farming and community gardens, I mean, these are in many times coming out of larger institutions, and they're white spaces, right? And they many times obviously want to be inclusive, but the history and the fact that the United States is really steeped in this idea of white supremacy, is something that permeates everything. So I think when we started this, we wanted to be intentional about the fact that this was about improving the health of the Black community. I mean, I was in education a long time. I looked at educational disparities. I started looking at health disparities. I looked for, well, how can I help my community? Wanted to move from being on those committees to do something on the ground. And so I felt that this health aspect can really be supported by the work. In terms of identity, as a mixed race guy, this ethnic identity is definitely something that I've been looking at. I mean, I had an opportunity when working for Seattle schools to transition from science to equity and race relations. That gave me an opportunity. I think it gave me the opportunity to be in spaces where I realized that it's important sometimes to really be inclusive, but also to raise up certain groups depending on what you want to, depending on your outcome. And so for me now, this has become, we want to be an inclusive farm, but we're very intentional about the fact it's an opportunity for Black leadership, right? And so we're unapologetic about trying to look for the excellence in the Black community to help us become better and better in terms of that. Again, want it to be inclusive. And so we're welcome everyone to come to the farm, but we also understand that because of this long history of racial segregation, continuing housing community segregation, really based on past practices, for us, it's important to be able to create spaces. And sometimes those are spaces for affinity groups. So we may say, hey, we're going to have a POC picnic. I think folks that come to the farm and work on the farm, or white folks, also understand this is a space we're coming into. And so that allows them to feel okay about that, to understand that it's not that you're not as welcome as that it's more important to be in a space. And we might have a Black-only healing session. This then creates opportunity. We create an opportunity for ourselves, right, for healing, but we also create an opportunity for people that have to wrestle with that. Does that mean that I leave my other race partner behind? Does it mean that they are welcome depending on the situation? And so those are things that in the U.S. we have just been taught not to talk about. So this is an opportunity to bring them to the surface and say, yeah, this can cause some pain, but you have to stay engaged. You have to allow folks to wrestle with some of these. We don't think we're going to be solving all these problems, but you can't if you don't try to create a space where people can be honest, and also honest about when they're hurt and how that feels, and how we can not push those feelings down, elevate them, but not get stuck there. I've just been really blessed with the opportunity to have the experiences in my life and to be able to come to this, and then to have this as a space that I can see grow, and just the really marvelous young folks that it's attracted. Again, the Black brilliance that we've got there, the community building. We're in the middle of building something here, and I'm very excited about the future that this holds.
Mm-hmm. Yeawa, how have you experienced these things that Ray is talking about, especially in terms of race and healing?
For myself, those spaces of just having those Black only or BIPOC only spaces has been really healing for myself, because going into the outside world, there aren't those exclusive spaces. Or when we try to create those exclusive spaces, in my experience through academia that tried to create like a BSU, it was met with, oh, well, you're trying to exclude everyone else. And it was never about that. We're in this very white space, but how do we uplift these voices or create a space for these folks to literally exist or talk about whatever they're going through, talk about their pain without judgment or questioning or whatever that case is. And I think at Yes Farm, for myself, I've ran into it very little of folks feeling some type of way, or white folks feeling some type of way. It's definitely folks coming into the space understanding that, okay, like there is a long-term mission here, and how do I come into the space and help, and how do I become a resource or an ear or whatever the case is. Or if I'm told to pick up trash, I'm gonna just pick up trash. The seating is for the Black folks. Let the Black folks do the seating and let me go do whatever else I need to go do, or however else I can support. So I think it's really been interesting to see the world transition in that way, or just see Yes Farm be that space where folks can be challenged, folks can ask questions, and it's met with love and reciprocity at times. Some questions can be a little inappropriate. But then it comes down to being like, that's not a question for me. That's something you have to wrestle with. It's really been beautiful to see the ripple effect of centering Black folks, but also white folks being challenged or other race folks being challenged in their own ideologies and what it means to really be an ally, right? Like what it really means to say Black Lives Matter and not slap a bumper sticker on your car. It's like, how do I show up in this space and how do I be a resource? How do I help? How do I provide my generational wealth? How do I provide my time, my energy so that Black folks and people of color or BIPOC folks are being heard, seen, and valued within this space? And it's been really healing for myself, most definitely.
I'm curious, Ray, earlier you used the term healing session. What does that look like?
I'll describe this one aspect that we invited the very spiritual person that does community healing out to the farm. We had some volunteer work and some food, and then we provided a space, a circle of folks sitting on the grass. We let this person then take that space and turn it into something that she then can create to do some community healing. And so there are a lot of folks out there with very powerful folks that have the skill to bring people to and create a space that makes that, maybe more of a sacred space. Somehow they can bring this out in folks. The work that they do will allow folks to reach into themselves and do whatever it is that happens right in this healing. And so for us, it's been an opportunity to set the table. We've been able to, through a lot of our partnerships, have the space. We've been able to, with volunteer work, create a space there. We're lucky to have the sunshine of Seattle in our southwest exposure, putting that energy into the space. And then it's the people there that create that.
It's interesting that I think both of you have done this. You've talked about gardening and plant care. You've talked about eating together, and you've talked about healing, almost as if they're all connected. Is that the case? Is there a way that the gardening and even the eating of the things that you produce actually leads to or supports works of collective healing?
As long as I can remember, eating together was just a way of coming together and providing community. I remember being younger, and in my household, we had an mkeka, which is like a mat essentially, and everyone would sit around it and eat together, you know what I mean? And we're on the ground and we're on the floor. But in that way, it builds so much community, conversation, camaraderie. I think they're effortlessly connected within the Yes Farm space because of the different folks that come through and because of all the love that's being put into the space. Just thinking back in hindsight, how folks make that possible. But I think it really does go back to bringing your full self and your authentic self to any space that really allows that healing to come through. And that really allows that, even if I'm having a tough day, it's like I can go share a meal with this person because maybe all I need to do is sit in silence, but that creates a relationship, that creates bonds that are essentially healing.
I'm curious about whether the acts of working with the soil and with plants and animals and the acts of eating together, if those things maybe don't also bring up issues of trauma, just simply because of the place that they're touching inside of us.
I would say most definitely. I think, like I said before, just being in such an interesting time in my life. I'm 23, navigating my childhood, navigating being an adult and feeling somewhere in the middle. Yeah, there's been times where I've just straight up cried on the farm from literally just coming there and sitting down for 10 minutes and the sun hitting my face or the rain hitting my face. And like Ray was saying, like the folks that come in and put that intention into the ground and put that intention into the folks that are around them, it never goes away. Energy never dies. So it just sits within the earth. And as we continue to plant and as we continue to create these relationships, those feelings, it's like you can't really put a name to it because it's so spiritual, it's so internal, and it touches you in a way that I feel I've never really been touched in my life. You know what I mean? And I think just through farming, and I'm so glad I've been drawn to it and aligned with it because it just allows me to feel, even if I'm hacking at the dirt's not going to get mad at me, right? It's like, okay, like I need to be hacked away at, you know what I mean? Like yesterday being at Small Axe, dealing with some of my own inner trauma, that's what I was doing. We're creating a greenhouse. And so on the sides, we're trying to clear the grass away just so it's even so we can drill into the greenhouse. And I was going through some of my own inner strife and I just broke down in tears and I just went for a walk. But then I was able to come back and communicate with the folks around me, you know what I mean? Or just to see a robin, a red-breast robin, and to know that, all right, like everything's going to be okay in the end, right? So I think most definitely that space and just connecting with the earth and the energy that's being put into the earth, to the plants around us and to one another, it stays there and it stays within us in a very beautiful way. That is so, I want to say undescribable, but I'm describing it. But it really, when you feel it and when you touch it, you know that it's so much deeper than anything that we can try to explain here, like in the 3D on this plane, right? It's so much more deeper than that. And it heals not only myself, but it allows hopefully like generations after me to heal and to begin that work just by me hacking and crying at the greenhouse or at the grass in front of the greenhouse. So,
well, there's something really powerful in what you're talking about. That really, if we are intentional and open ourselves to it, there's power in creation. There's power in nature to heal us and restore us. But I think too often we're not conditioned to think that way. And I suspect that a lot of people go about their daily lives without understanding that healing potential that could be all around them or could be in a place that they could get to in terms of a natural setting. Could you explain to me real quickly, you used the word Small Axe, just tell me what that is?
Small Axe is a farm, 4 acres over in Woodinville. And I think they've had it for a few years, but what we've been working on for the past like 3 weeks is building this very, very beautiful greenhouse. What the Black Farmers Collective is trying to do is to get more folks out there, similar to Yes Farm, but Small Axe is more in a rural area. So it's more where the wine country is. It's away from the city, which is also very beautiful. So it gives definitely like a different feel, a different vibe to what we're doing there. It's a lot more quiet. But yeah, that's a little bit about Small Axe.
Humans we have been successful on the earth. One reason is we'll eat almost anything. And I think we also are successful because we have the ability to build community, to help each other. So I think that the eating together is just a very, very basic human connection. Breaking bread is just something that folks do. And so when you add to that, the larger idea of, first of all, thanking the folks that gave the food to you, and then actually being part of getting that food and being in a community to actually get the food, that community building is a really important thing. I mean, I think if we look at the health of our community, many of the reasons that folks aren't as healthy as they should be, don't live as long as they should be, are related to this idea of food and community. The better food you eat, the better your body's going to be able to function. The stress of modern life and all the stresses that are put on us can be relieved somewhat by working the ground and working the ground with community and being with community, developing relationships that continue off the farm or healthy. Those societies that have the greatest longevity also have within the society ways for people to stay connected, especially into age. And so all of these things are really tied to health and tied to our connection to the earth. And I think the more we can be connected to the earth and understand that's important to us, the better we are going to be as a society, down to the individual health, but then also the idea that we need to help each other. And so to build a community, that's part of their mission, is to help each other.
Yeah. Well, as you both may or may not know, the podcast has listeners from all over the world. Many of them listen to the podcast to get inspiration and ideas for their own work of earth care and environmental justice wherever they are. I am wondering, how might the work of Black Farmers Collective, or Yes Farm in particular, have relevance to them? Let's say if they're in Costa Rica or Australia. What do you hope might be the takeaway from our conversation, Ray?
I hope we can be an inspiration, that this is the kind of project that has some value that folks are asking for. Suggest folks start small. I think if you're in a community and trying to help your own community, look around for who else might want to do this and try to get started in a small way. If you're in a position to try to help a community, then it's, I think, very important to be able to understand the needs and the strengths of that community and to take your helping in as what do you need? How can I help you raise your strengths and capacity within a community?
Yeah.
It can be a lot of work. And so I definitely would say start small. But I think for listeners who have been looking for some way to connect an environment within maybe the cities that they are, this is a possibility.
And I so love the fact that you couched everything in community. When we do these things together, it just becomes possible in ways that it just isn't with individuals, and probably more fun at the same time.
The Yes Farm to start with, right? It's a big undertaking. It would not have happened without community work. These things don't happen because one or two folks decide they want to put all their energy into it, but it's part of a community. And so when you're building something, you need to figure out what your relation to, whether you're in the community, how do you build a community that can support this effort? Efforts that are driven by one strong person then fade when that strong person fades, right? Whereas community continues.
Yeawa and I both know the term co-powerment from our work together at the graduate level. And I hear that word being reflected in what you're saying. You can go in and become the expert and present the solutions that you think ought to happen, or you can surrender yourself to the gifts and strengths of other people, right? So instead of empowering, your mission becomes co-powering. You understand that you need everyone in order to come up collectively with some kind of way forward or an answer to a social challenge. Yeawa, what about you? Is there something that you would advise people who are in other countries thinking about what they might take away from our conversation?
Yeah, I think immediately as you asked that question, for me, it's just always been the youth. And I know it's different in various regions of the world, but really there's so much trauma in today's world. And for me, bringing my sibling out here and allowing them to work into the farm and the land and seeing how that has just affected them and has affected their life. And for myself, like I consider myself a youth and how it's impacted me, just continuing to bring youth in and for Black folks really shifting that narrative of what farming is, right? And that our folks have been doing this. We weren't just slaves, right? We were greatness. And so we can definitely channel that and bring ourselves back to that greatness when it comes to farming and when it comes to all types of horticultural. And I just think really reiterating like the youth, bring them in and allow them to heal, allow them to cry, allow them to hack at the ground, allow them to climb a tree and really connect with that inner child while they're still young, because that I feel will take them so far in life and it'll continue to heal the generations to come. So bring the youth in, the youth are the truth, and it'll just create more safety and learning opportunities and what that means for them inside of them, right? And for them to create their own narratives of literally what it means to be alive and to learn from the earth has been my experience. So I hope definitely bringing that to other youth across the regions and allowing them to heal.
We've been in conversation with Ray Williams and Yeawa Asabi of Black Farmers Collective and Yes Farm. If you'd like to learn more about the work of the collective, be sure to check out the show notes for this episode on the podcast website. If you appreciate this podcast and want to help us expand its global reach, please share this episode with a friend. You can also show your support by subscribing. Just go to whatever platform you listen to podcasts on and hit the subscribe or follow button for the Earthkeepers podcast. Finally, it would be very helpful if you could leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher. I'm Forrest Ginsley, your podcast host. Our executive producer is James Amadon. Our producer is Dave Ulfers. Forrest Reed is our editor and the creator of our original music. Our research assistant is Rochelle Nordman, and Jesselyn Gentry is our social media director. Thank you, friends, for listening. And please join us for our next conversation on the Earthkeepers podcast.